En volgens mij doet hij het dan daar ook. Yep, that works like a charm. Hey guys, and welcome in our studio in Emmeloord. First of all, of course, it's already halfway January, and tonight in the Netherlands we're gonna watch Alien Romulus, imagine that. So, Happy New Year, and I hope that you guys will have the best year ever. But today it's about photography. Today it's about something that I really like to do, work with different modifiers. And in this case we're going to use the Westcott Lindsay Adler Gobo snoot. I call it a projector, but it's officially, I believe it's called a snoot. But hey, the projector because it projects images. Now we get a lot of questions from you guys like, hey, how can you be creative with your gear? And in essence, it's not that hard. You just take the gear that you have, for example, a softbox, and you just try to use it in different methods. So in other words, feathering, for example, using the sides of the softbox is something that one day somebody just thought like, hey, you know what, let's aim it straight at our model all the time, but why not just aim it away from our model? I was going like, wow, I love that soft quality of light. And I think that's the same way that we use Gobo projectors. Now, if we go way back in the old days, like for example, George Horrell, Harcourt, and all those other great glamour photographers from the 30s and 40s, you will see that they use a lot of shadows on the backdrops. For example, a plant where you use a very harsh, bright light source on, and that projects a pattern on the backdrop. And that actually determines that whole style, that whole age of that photography. And let's be honest, we totally love it. But at one point, of course, you can also use those shadows on your models. And then you get something completely different. Now, the moment that we switch to color photography, somehow the Gobo projector is still there, but it's not used that much anymore. And I think that's a shame, because especially with color, you can do amazing stuff with the Gobo projector. Now, nowadays we use the Gobo projector, of course, in the digital workflow. So that means that we have digital cameras that can bump up the ISO. We also have Photoshop where we can do some crazy stuff in the backdrops or just use artificial intelligence to create a whole scene. But for me, somehow I always want to have it in camera. I try to get as much as possible right in the camera. And that's a challenge. So that means that we use a real backdrops, that we use real lighting, real lens flares, and of course, a real model, right? Right? Yeah? No, just sit down. Just say yes. As you can hear, it's not an AI model, it's a real model that we're going to use today. And of course, we have our studio dog here, also Chewy. So sometimes you hear him because he's very, how do you call that, playful today somehow. And I have some brand news. Now, normally with the digital classroom, we try to give you the best quality possible, except for this camera, it still flickers on and off. But software is also very important in your workflow, and that's today, for the first time ever. We're not using our normal software Wirecast, we're actually using OBS. Why OBS? Well, it's actually very simple. We wanted to do some stuff that with OBS was a little bit more easy to do, especially on the road and switching over between iPads and laptops. So that's why today we're using different software, so stuff will look a little bit differently, like for example our overlays. And they did a great job, I think, on this. Look at that. So now we have new overlays. Aren't those awesome? And of course, we can go back to our main camera. But for now, let's start our digital classroom with our intro. Yeah, and that was Anna Week that you saw behind me. So first of all, of course, I have to think about our sponsors. Okay, I see what's going on. Let me fix that very quickly. I'm so sorry for that. I have to add I have to add an audio input capture there. Sorry, guys. Let me do this. 1, 2. Okay, and I think now we will have audio on that track too. Transition, okay. There we go. Okay, now we should have audio also on that track. Okay, very quickly, Rogue, of course, is the brand that you probably know from the Frank Doroff Flash Bender. They also have a great magnetic system for on your speedlight, your Godox, or your Gigoto strobes. And of course, the fiberglass umbrellas. Now, Rogue, IQ Wire, Click Backdrops, and Gigoto are brands that we also distribute. But, and I'm totally honest with that, I don't promote the brands because we sell them. I promote the brands because I've been using them. For example, for Rogue, I've been an ambassador for over 10 years before we started selling them in our shop and in stores in the Netherlands. So that's a little bit difficult sometimes for people to distinguish, but the products that I use and sell are really the products that we use in our work. BenQ, if you need a new monitor, I highly recommend checking out BenQ. They have great monitors, and especially price-wise, it's just a very, very good deal. I use the SW321 myself, and they have that paper-like display quality, and I really like that. There's no real shine on the screen, and the Adobe RGB just looks absolutely gorgeous. Now, if you're in the European Union and you want a 10% discount on your BenQ monitors, just drop us an email. We still have some codes that will give you a 10% discount on your BenQ monitor, but you have to live in the European Union. Now, of course, Cascable. You will see Cascable during Digital Classroom, and I use it all the time during my workshops. It's an app that I run on my iPad to shoot tethered. It's absolutely awesome. It's very, very fast, and it's a one-time buy, and that's something that I really like because I love subscriptions, but not for everything. And for this kind of software, I just prefer a one-time buy. They just released a new version on the Mac desktop, and it's called the Pro Studio. I'm still shooting with a normal version, but if you wanted to use also on your desktop and you want some extra features that I personally don't use, then make sure you check out the Studio Pro version. And of course, Calibrite. We want to make sure that our images look as great as we shoot them, probably sometimes even better than we shoot them, but at least the color has to be accurate. And that's why we use the color checker passports from Calibrite, but also the calibration tools from Calibrite. So those are our sponsors, and they've been with us for a very, very long time. So that's why we give a little bit of extra attention to them. Today, the Gobo projector. First, I'm going to explain to you guys what the Gobo projector is. I'm going to show you, and then we're going to do a lighting setup with it. I guess the whole digital classroom will be 2 sets where we're going to use a fill-in light and we're going to use accent lighting. So my main light is going to be the Gobo projector. I'm going to use it on the model. I'm going to use one strobe in the first setup as my accent lighting to create a little bit of a mood. And then we're going to move that strobe to the front to give you a nice fill-in so you can see what you can do with high contrast images and then making them a little bit more low contrast, but without infecting the skin. I think that's one is going to be very interesting for people that love to work with different light sources and combine them, but always struggle with how do I get those freaking colors right? Well, that's the trick that I'm going to show you. Okay, so Anouk, are you ready to take over?
Yes.
And yeah, do you think you can do it with our new software?
Of course not.
Okay, then I'm going to transition for you so you don't have to do anything else.
Well, I'm gonna change it after all, Frank.
Oh, please don't.
Yes.
Okay, so if Digital Classroom stops working, please all send mails to Anouk, PO Box, the Netherlands, and complain to her. Okay, so a Gobo projector. A Gobo projector is actually a very, very nice, cool device. The first thing you will see is we have the mount. This is where we mount it to our strobe. In my case, I'm using an Ellingrom adapter to a Bowens mount. So officially, I ordered it in the Ellingrom mount because at that time I was still using Ellingrom, and because the Bowens mount is very easy to convert, I highly recommend getting just a normal converter for Bowens. Don't do anything else, just use the converter. After that, you have the projector unit. This one is nicely cooled because those things can get really, really hot, but you don't want any light spillage. And this is something that you see a lot in the cheaper projectors. We get a lot of light spill and it just doesn't work. This one works great. It can still get a little bit hot, so make sure if you use strobes with hot lights instead of LEDs that you are very careful with what you place in front of it. So be careful with gels and all the other stuff because it will get hot. Now in the front, Anouk, are you okay? Okay. In the front, you can see that we have blades. Now the blades you can already use to create, for example, a rectangular pattern or, for example, a beam of light on our model. One moment, is everything going okay, Annemiek? Oh, okay, sure. They do funky stuff and then I'm a little bit worried about what's going on. Okay, on the front you will have a lens. Now the lens is very important and vital for how it will look. If you use, like here, a 50mm lens, you will have a certain spread of your image. If you use a 135mm lens, and that's the one that actually delivered with the projector, you get a totally different look. For me personally, I wanted to spread out evenly and over a larger area, so that's why I'm using the 50mm lens. What's also very important is the aperture of the lens. You have to make sure that you get a lens with a very wide aperture, because believe it or not, these units eat light. You will see it when we put it on the 400 Gobo. It's on full power and I probably have to bump up my ISO to 400 or 800 to get the depth of field that I want. Luckily, our GT200s can go very, very low in power output, so I don't have a real problem by mixing the Gobo projector with, for example, an extra accent light. And of course, because we use a gel on the light, it also takes away a lot of that lighting. So what do we put in front of it? Now, of course, the blades, we can create a nice rectangular look. And I'm going to do that in the second part. I'm going to make a nice, like a line of light over our model and then fill it up. Now, for this part, I want to use the patterns. Now, we have different kinds of patterns. You can, for example, do something like this, but these are just straight lines. Maybe that's not that interesting. Or you can do something with stars. And I think with this setup, I think the stars will be awesome. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the stars and we're going to take the Gobo out of this one. And by the way, very soon there will be a video online because we MacGyvered one of those Gobos with gels. And it gave some really interesting options, to be honest. Okay, so I'm placing my Gobo inside the holder. And the thing is, sometimes they will be a little bit loose. So what I'm going to ask, Annemiek, can you give me a little bit of tape, please? So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of tape just on the bottom part here. So I'm going to make sure that it stays in the Gobo holder. Now the original Westcott Gobos are a little bit thicker, so they don't have this problem. These are a little bit cheaper ones. So that's why we use a little bit of tape. And there we go. Now it won't fall out. Okay, place it in the projector, make sure that it clicks nicely. There we go. And now the thing is, as soon as I have it on the strobe, now I can use my focus to actually create more sharpness or less sharpness in the shadows. And this is the part about the Gobo projector that I really like. If I want to have those lines on my model, for example, from Venetian blinds, I have to make sure that my light source is very far away and the Venetian blinds are really close to my model. Sometimes you just can't do it for the very simple reason you want, for example, your model sitting in a chair, but you still want those lines, but your studio isn't 50 meters wide. This is where a Gobo projector can be really awesome because you don't have to have the Venetian blinds in the shot. You can just use a Gobo projector and have those lines really sharp or a little bit out of focus or maybe more. It's an unlimited supply of looks and feels. So let's place it on our Gobo GT400 because we use, of course, the Bowens mounts. There we go. Now the thing is, because it eats light like crazy, you have to make sure that everything is set up correctly before the model comes in. Now, as you can already see, with our studio lights, we can't see anything. So for now, and I hope you're not afraid of the dark, we're going to turn off the studio lights very quickly because I do have to focus. Okay, so now when I look at my backdrop, I can literally see my stars. So now I can focus the stars. I can aim my stars. There we go. And I think this is nice. I don't want them too sharp. Oh, wow, nice. Yep, I think this is okay. So I'm going to turn on the studio lights again for you guys. There we go. Okay, Lois.
Yes.
Can you please stand? And come a little bit more forward because we have our accent light there. Move. There we go. This is great. Do you mind the lights or I can turn them off if you want? It's okay? Yeah. Okay, cool. Now what I want, of course, is I want to try to get a lighting pattern on her face with a star over her eye. A little bit like Harley Quinn. The only problem is I have no clue about my light output. Now, you could say, use a light meter, Frank. Yes, I know. But with this kind of stuff, you never know where you meter your light. For the very simple reason, it could be on the star, it could be a little bit off the star, or maybe from the side. You never know. So that's why I'm using the just shoot and we'll see what happens method. Are you okay, Annemiek?
Yeah, I'll just get this out of the way.
Yeah, that's okay. So I love the stars. Let me place it a little bit more over her eye. Okay, tilt your chin up just a little bit. There we go. Nice. So now we have it over our eyes. The only problem I have is I have this beautiful model and I just can't see anything from my model. She's totally dark, right? And this is where we start to do our light in light. Now, the first thing I want to do is I want to give a kicker light from the back. Now, a kicker light means that we give a little bit of extra light from the back. You can also call it an accent light or rim lighting, but it all is the same thing. You just use some light from the back. So, let's turn the blue one on. The only thing that I want with the blue one is normally you would place it behind your model. But in this case, because we also want to open up the front, I'm going to use something called lens flares. Now, lens flares will open up shadows intentionally. Sometimes you don't want it in your image, but in this case, I think it will work really nice. So I'm going to move this forward. I'm going to aim it slightly at my model, but more at me. So I'm going to use the feathering technique. So the side of the light will hit the model, but most of the light will hit the lens. To make it work even better, I'm using a K&F Concept black mist filter or black diffusion filter. And of course, I'm going to take my sun hood off. Because, well, we don't want any protection at the moment. The backlight is going to be on 128th, so that's the lowest setting possible. And let's see what happens. There we go. As you can see, it already opens up the shadows just a little bit, but we don't see any blue. And that's nice, because that means that we can just raise the output of the blue. So let's go up. Nice. Opening up a little bit more. Let's go. Now let's get some really funky image in. Okay, cool. Now you can already see that lens flare coming up. You see that we have a little bit more blue on our model. So now I'm going to use something that I absolutely love from Rogue, and that's the omnidirectional dome. So I'm going to move this strobe forward. And because I want more fill on my model, I'm going to use the dome on my strobe to give it more spread. And by using the dome, I'm now also able to aim it slightly more in between. There we go. Let's give it a little bit more power. There we go. Nice lowers. Give it a lot more power. Nice. And there you go. So now this is, of course, a really stark and high contrast image. It all depends also on how you look at that image. Now, when we look at an image like this, you immediately see that we have one bright side, but the whole image is a little bit more balanced towards the other side, right? So how do we solve that? Well, one of the things you can do is make your model look the other way. So if you want to look that way. So now you get something like this. For me, a little bit of a fairy tale. The problem I have with shots like this is the viewing angle. Now, we love in the Western world to read from the left top to the bottom right, right? When I look at an image like this, because there's a bright spot on the right top side, it already captures you a little bit into that shot and it guides you towards your image. So in other words, it's a nice flow. But what would happen if we just change the position of that fill-in light and use the technique where we actually use the positive space or negative space on the other side? So let's change the strobe over. And I'm probably gonna piss off my dog. There we go. Okay. I still want the light in for that lens flare effect. Let's give it a little bit more extension. There we go. Okay. The only thing I changed is the position of the light. I think it's a little bit too bright now, but we'll see. Yeah, that's way too bright. So change the angle more towards me to get more lens flare and less on my model. Yep, there's a blue gel there. But because it's so bright, it looks white. And that's why we have to tone that down. So the first thing you can do to tone that down is actually angle your light away from your model by using the sides of the light. So let's see if that works enough. Yeah, that's already nice. And as you can see now I'm filling up that whole area with that blue light. So I'm using it as an accent light, I'm using the stars, and I have my model there. And I think this is something that Gobo projector really helps out to give you a unique atmosphere in your shots. So let's experiment a little bit with this. So if you can look down. Nice. I would love to have the stars, of course, on her face. And as I can see now, I'm a little bit too high. So I'm going to lower the strobe. Let's see. This is a really cool star. This is a big one. So stay in that position. Do you see the star? No, probably, but stay in that position. Oh, this is really nice. Now, because the face now gets all the light from the star, now we're getting somewhere. And now I'm feeling the mood of that shot a little bit more. Now, of course, I'm overexposing slightly when I look at my screen, but sometimes overexposing can always be a good thing. Can also be a good thing, sorry. And in this case, I actually like it a lot, so I think I'm going to keep it this way. Get some lens flaring. Slightly lower angle. Ooh, this is cool. Don't block your face. Yes, that's nice. Cool. You can also walk, of course, the other way. And then you have some nice front lighting with the blue. Now, this will be a little bit too bright for my personal taste. But some people will probably now go, oh, this is really nice for example, a senior portrait or maybe a band that wants something unique. You have to realize these are not normal shots, right? Everything is infected with blue. You have the stars in there. So this is probably not something you would do for your family shoot. But let's be honest, this is absolutely awesome for example, a nice offbeat commercial shoot. Lois, can you move a few inches that way? Perfect. So it's very hard for me now to see where the stars are because there's no studio lighting. A little bit more that way. Perfect. And move that way with your head. Now I can see the star. Yeah, that would be awesome in a completely dark environment because now I'm trying to get an accent light on my model from the side. So not exactly the star, but just giving that nice accent on her face. And that's very difficult to do now because I can't see anything that I'm doing. As soon as I turn off, for example, this light, this will drastically change my options because now I can ask my model to strike a pose. Perfect. And I can literally just fine-tune my strobe. Don't move. As we like to say, keep it that way. There we go. Nice. Awesome. And as you can see now, because now I have my options, move, there we go. And this is, of course, the smaller star on her face, the big one on the body. And at this moment, move that way, there we go. And look that way. Perfect, this is it. Don't move. And now I want half of her eye. So by having the lights off, the projector becomes way easier to control. Okay, now I want to, oh, sorry. Okay, move a little bit that way. Perfect, that's it, don't move. Cool, and you can change for the next set if you want. Also if you don't want, by the way. Okay, let me turn this off and then we go behind the desk. Okay, so let's switch over.
There was a question about what brand it was, so I put the box.
Ah, okay. Let me switch back to my camera. Okay, there we go. We're going to take a look at some of the images now, and I'm going to say to you, or I'm going to tell you what I like about them and what not. But before that, I want to show you very quickly the monitor that I'm using. And actually, I think, again, if you want a new monitor, check out BenQ. Absolutely great monitor. Anyweek is, by the way, using the new 27-inch. And the cool thing about that monitor is what you also saw here. We only have one USB-C cable. So that means that you just drag in your laptop, just connect one USB-C cable and everything is connected. And that's something that I really like. I want an uncluttered workflow. I want something that's fast, but I also want to be able to work on location. I want to be able to use in studio. And I don't want to worry about, hey, is my plugin the same as at home? Is my document folder the same? And that's the main thing about using a laptop on location, of course.
Ineke asked to show the box.
Okay, Ineke asked to show the box. This is the Westcott.
Well, it's
So it's an optical spot, they call it. It's from Westcott, and it's called the Lindsay Adler optical spot. I always call it a Gobo projector. But, Ineke, if you email me, I will give you some directions. Okay.
Can you use a beamer?
Can you use a beamer to create something? Okay, can you use a projector to create something similar? Yes and no. I promise you that in a coming workshop, I will start using a projector. I believe we have...
This Saturday?
Yeah, this Saturday. We have Classical Masters. I can try to do something with the projector next Saturday, and I know you're here for that workshop, so let's try that. But yes, you can do something similar with a projector, but not the same. What a Gobo projector does is it creates shadows, and what a projector does, it emits light. Now, in essence, you can create approximately the same thing. The main advantage of a projector is you can project whatever you want. So if you want a nice slide on your model, or you want to draw something, like I did a Calibite 1 video a few years ago where we used a projector. and you just open up Photoshop in black mode, so in totally F mode. That means that everything is gone, you have no tools, you have no bars, it's just totally black. If you have your background black, of course. Now you take a brush with white paint and you just let your model lay or sit down, and now with your brush you can just paint literally where the projector is shining, and you can create beautiful images that you normally could never ever create with normal lighting. And that's one of the things that I love about when you use a projector. With a Gobo projector or a snoot, you are of course always linked to the Gobos that you have. So if you have Venetian blinds, that's what you're going to get. And you can focus them, you can unfocus them, you can use a different lens, but that's it. If you have a tree, that's the tree. With a projector, totally new options appear. And the quality is, depending on the light output of the projector, actually pretty good. So it's a very, very cool tool. So I will use one Saturday in the workshop if you're here. Let's switch to our picture-in-pictures big, and let's see if that works too. So I'm going to transition, and if I'm correct, you still hear my audio. Oh yes, everything works. That's awesome. That always terrifies me. In all honesty, I'm not that scared for the whole live shoots and photo shoots and telling you guys stuff. It's always the gear that drives me nuts and insane when something goes wrong, and that's just very terrifying. Okay, so when you can start out with your optical snoot projector, or how is it called? The optical snoot, you can actually, of course, start the optical spot, sorry. You can start out with just the pattern on your model, as you can see here, and that's okay. It's nice, but it doesn't really excite me as a photographer. Now, it's nice, of course, that you can light her eye like that and that you have the stars over here, but I want to see more of my model, but I also want to be more engaged with my image. And that's when you start to open up shadows, otherwise it just won't work. So that's why I use the blue gel. Now when you use your blue gel from the side, that's normally how we do it, like an accent lighting. That's how I started my photography and model photography. Place a strobe behind my model so I can create a nice aura of light. The problem I always struggled with was those bloody hairs. You always saw those hairs and you see the dust in your studio, and I was just photoshopping all those hairs away, and at one point I was just going like, wow, why do all my models look like they just came out of a Barbie box? And that's because you took all the stray hairs away, so you put some hairs back in, and you go like, oh, this is way too much work. Then you find out that if you place your accent lights from the side and use soft boxes, yeah, I used hard lights behind my model, not that smart at that time. But if you use soft boxes, and especially if you turn them towards the photographer, so you use the sides of the soft boxes, you get this crazy, beautiful, soft quality of light. And now you don't have those stray hairs anymore, and it looks great. So this is how you would normally do it, right? With the blue on the side. However, if you want to open up shadows and you want to make sure that something is more engaging with the color, so it just bleeds out over the whole image, we have something called lens flare. Now, lens flare is something that you normally don't want in your images because it's bad, right? It's an artifact. And this is why with normal modern lenses, it's very hard to get lens flare correctly. It's often very harsh because you have to push the strobe so hard to get that lens flare that it just looks harsh. Older lenses like the M42 lenses, especially Yenna lenses or Zeiss lenses, are great. If you ever find zebras in M42, just buy them because those are awesome. Now, what are zebras? Black and silver lenses. Those are really good, and often they're called Yenna or Zeiss by Yenna. Now, those lenses are great for creating lens flares. As soon as they see light, they go like, whoa, lens flare. My modern lens, my Sony 24-70 G Master lens, it's a totally different story. That lens sees a lens flare and goes like, not in my ballpark, nope, no way. And it's just perfect, but not for what I like to do. So that's why I cheat a little bit and I use a filter called a black diffusion filter or black mist filter. What it is, it's a normal filter with a lot of micro nano dots sprayed on it. And when you shoot a normal scene, you won't have any problem with that filter. You don't see anything. That's why a lot of people actually ask me like, hey, I bought the filter. It's a huge disappointment because all my images are sharp. I don't see anything. And I go like, awesome, right? Because you can just leave the filter on all day long. You don't have any problems. But if you want to see the effect, place your model in front of a normal window and shoot it with the filter and without. And then they email me back like, oh, wow, you get that really wraparound effect. Now, in front of a window, it looks terrible because your model actually almost disappears. You know the feeling, right? It's like totally overwhelming with lens flares. But if you use it with your strobes barely in the picture, so what do I mean with barely in the picture? Let's take a look at my camera. So this is how I see it, and then I move my camera all the way here. So you can still see my hand probably a little bit in the top. And then take that out. There we go. And this is how I place my strobe. So I have my blue strobe. I place it to the corner. I place it to the corner. I can still see it a little bit. Now it's gone, and that's where I'm going to shoot. And because it's slightly out of the frame, I don't get that nasty white boom blob, but I still get that beautiful blue saturated color if I'm using it on a lower setting. Now, as you can see here, this is a nice saturated color, but it doesn't do what I want. So raise the volume a little bit and you get lens flare, but it's still too harsh. So at that point, what I decided to do was use the omnidirectional dome from Rogue. Now, the omnidirectional dome spreads the light out over a much larger area. We always say like, hey, it's our 75 centimeter softbox in a very, very small package. And as you can see here, that totally changes the look of the image. The problem I have with an image like this is the orientation. As I mentioned before, somehow I just like it when my model looks the other way. It just feels better for me, the flow in the image. I don't feel the need to leave the image. Now, when I look at an image like this, there's a high chance I'm going to retouch this because I actually love the shot. You see the star on her face, really nice. But as soon as I started moving my model to the other side, these images I feel a lot more. Now, these are also more the close-ups, but let's just change that to the more wider shots. There we go. Somehow I just like the orientation to that side better. They're different from the other one, so it's not a 100% comparison, but I hope you understand what I mean. It just flows nicer. Now here, of course, I'm using a lot of the accent lighting, so from the blue. Now, the thing that I like about the omnidirectional dome, as mentioned before, it just spreads the light out very evenly. It's sometimes really hard to control, especially when you use it on higher settings like I'm doing now. It is easy to just overlight everything. But in this case, I think it just works out fine. Now for the next setup, we're going to use something a little bit more extreme. I'm going to use lines on my model. And at that point, I don't have the stars anymore to cover up anything of her eyes or just make something jump out. So I have to have a different approach. So after this video, I'm going to show you something very quickly. We're going to go into the studio again. And of course, we're going to take some awesome shots. Okay, so if you want some really cool instructional videos, of course, make sure you check out Calibite. Calibite is without any doubt my favorite place to get instructional videos. And I'm very, very honored to be one of their instructors, of course. That's a whole different story, of course, but that's a huge honor. Okay, so different setup, different Gobo. Let's see what we can figure out, right? So I'm going to switch over to my picture-in-picture small for Anouk, and I'm going to switch over to the studio. And Anouk is going to take over. Are you ready, Anouk?
Yeah, but just checking if audio was there too.
Yep. Okay. Where are my Gobos? I think we're going to use the lines. Yeah, I don't have a lot of other options, to be honest. Yeah, I'm going to use lines. I'm going to switch over the Gobo. Oh. And of course, because we're Dutch, we're going to use the same piece of tape. Yep. Of course, Annewiek. I have to do honor to our Dutch heritage. Save money. Okay. I'm just kidding, guys. But we're still using the same tape. Yeah. Okay. You have to be careful which side you put it in. I did it the wrong way. Now it sticks. Perfect. Okay. Oh. First, I want to make sure that it works. Oh yeah, we can also use the blades. Okay, do you want me to use the blades? Okay, cool. Then we're going to use the blades. So we're going to take the Gobo out. Oh yeah, we can do two. No problem. Who said? There we go. Okay. I like it a little bit closer and maybe in a sort of triangle. I'm going to make a portrait. This is cool. Really like this. The second strobe I'm going to turn off for now. So I'm going to use the commander mode off. I'm just going to shoot it like this. I'm going to use a close-up, and you get something like this. Now, this is very harsh, so let's defocus slightly. There we go. I always love the extremes, but sometimes it's too much. That's nicer. You get that really nice feeling of a beach where somebody's standing maybe under the boardwalk. When I look at this, I go like, you know, in the previous shot I used blue, but for this one I think I'm going to go for red. That's your cue, Anouk. So I need the red one. Thanks. Now, as mentioned before, we're not going to do the same thing as before. I'm going to do it slightly different now. I'm going to take this strobe. I'm going to put it low. And place it in front of my main light. There we go. I'm going to aim it up. And I'm going to aim it towards the camera. So not towards my model, but towards the camera. I'm going to turn the power all the way down. So we're going to go all the way down to 128th to try it out first. Make sure that the camera is about the same height as your strobe. So I'm now seeing the strobe. Now I don't. Focus on my model and shoot. Great. So now we don't have any light from the red. So we're going to power the right red up. 132, 1/16. That's probably too much. Doesn't fire. It's still off. You can turn it up all the way you want, but if it's off, it won't fire. So let's start again with 128th. There we go. Okay, don't need the modeling lights for this. We can turn it off too. There we go. Now it fired. So now we can raise the output. Sorry guys. Nice. So now we have that nice red hue in there. Let's go a little bit higher. And it's very subtle. You can also place it on the sides. And when you place it on the sides, you need a little bit more extra power. Or what you can also do with our pistol grip, I just loosen it lightly. So now I can just pick my strobe up and just move it. And now I only have it on one side. It's not very subtle, Frank. It's very subtle. So if I go up again, we'll find out now it's more there. Yeah, and the more I move down, the more I get that effect. And this is too much. Okay, let's defocus it slightly more. There we go. Shoot from a slightly higher angle. Now, when I shoot slightly higher, as you can see, the distance becomes more. And when you use strobes this close to your lens, you have to raise the output if you even use it slightly different angles. So I raise the output, and now I have the same quality again. Oh, I love this. And you can place it slightly in the corners, as you can see here, or straight in the middle. It all depends on the look that you want. Or maybe you are the more adventurous type, like me, and you go all the way up to 100%, which in all honesty is a little bit much. But now when I move around, I can control it much more. And now you can see that it opens up the shadows, and it's also visible on the backdrop. And now, nothing stands in the way of refocusing my light on my model and get those really harsh quality of light shadows. Look at that. Now I don't want those lines on the backdrop anymore, just a little bit behind the model, because we can't take those out. And this is where, for example, the 135mm lens comes in great, that you get delivered with the projector, because those really focus on the face of the model instead of what I do, a more spread out area. Okay, but I think the close-ups are best. That's nice. Now, the thing that I don't like about the shot so far is it's all, I want those lines to be higher. So I'm going to take the Gobo projector, or the snoot, optical snoot, and I'm just going to aim it up. So now I have much more lighting on my backdrop. And because it's just lines, it will probably just fall great on my model. And now I can shoot from a slightly lower angle and still get a nice clean shot with all the stripes in the backdrop without cutting off. Nice. Oh. Okay, let's shoot again from here. Yeah, now it's more like sunshine, red sun. And the nice thing about this setup is that even when I move to the sides, that lens flare doesn't work, but I still have that red light on the backdrop. And if you don't want it that harsh, just go down in power on your fill-in light. Let's say we go to 1/4. And immediately you will see this gives a totally different look to our image. It has to be a portrait. There we go. Oh, I missed one, sorry. And the final one with this, and then we're going to use the blades. Nice! That one was awesome. Do you have one more set? Okay, cool, do that. Then we're going to use the blades. Can you take the Gobo out, Annemiek, so I can use the blades? And check the batteries, please, especially from the GT200. Okay, let's go for picture-in-picture, a large.
I adjusted the picture or something, Frank.
Oh, what did you adjust?
Your head was not always in the frame.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so what I like about the Gobo projector, as you can see here, is it creates a different atmosphere and mood in your shots. Now again, we started with the high contrast images and go like, yeah, those are cool, no problem at all. But as soon as we started adding that red strobe, and at first it was very subtle, just on the bottom, but as soon as I started adding it a little bit more, you could see that it started to open up the shadows, but also give more flair to the image. And you know, you can do stuff like this in Photoshop, you can do it in Instagram or whatever you use, but somehow when you do it on set, it just looks better. And whenever I see those AI images, and don't get me wrong, I love artificial intelligence, I think it can really do better for humanity, or worse, but all that stuff that you create with text to image, let's be honest, that's not real creativity. It's not something that you can be proud of, like, hey, I created it. And it just looks off for me. Or it's too good that you go like, wow, it's impossible. Or it just looks fake. And especially when you start doing stuff like this with very subtle color changes, when you do it live, the lens flare sits everywhere. It sits in the backdrop, but very subtle. It sits in your lens. It just flows over to your model. It's more fluid when you do it real. So I highly recommend trying to also learn to light your model the proper way instead of doing everything with artificial intelligence. And again, during the digital during the digital classroom broadcast, that's a tongue breaker for me. During the digital classroom broadcast, we of course have to be very fast. I have studio lighting, so I don't see what I'm doing. We can't really push to get the perfect image. But when I see something like this, I have to be totally honest, like, okay, let's say that I have more time to do an image like this. What would I change? Yeah, maybe the hands, a little bit different. Everything else I really like about this shot. This is of course way over the top, but it can be cool. And this is something that I really advise you guys to do. Sometimes do something where you go like, this is never going to work. This is going to look horrible. This is terrible. But sometimes you get an image and you go like, oh, but maybe if we just turn that down just a little bit, if next time I change it that way, and you get a completely new style. When I started with photography, in all honesty, I also shot everything as flat as possible. I didn't want any shadows on the backdrop. It drove me nuts to see a shadow on the backdrop. And at that time, Photoshop wasn't that advanced as now, so clone it out. And it looked terrible. All those images look very sterile, if that's the correct term. It just looks flat. And then at one point, one of my strobes didn't fire. I was going like, whoa, look at this. Now I see depth, now I see 3-dimension. Oh, I love the shadows there. And I was going like, maybe I should shoot more without that second strobe. And that's how it started, guys. And then at one point, I did realize that that part was really dark. So, hey, if I like it dark, why not use something that can aim my light more? So I asked at that time Photo Flits, the Allingram dealer in the Netherlands, like, hey, do you have anything that steers the light better? And at that time, Photo Flits just gave me the perfect advice: use a strip light. I was going like, strip lights, that sounds interesting. So I got my first Allingram strip lights, and I never looked back because those were my modifiers. Because now I could have one light source big on my model and one light source just giving an accent light. And that's how it all started, guys, just with a very simple mistake. And this is how a lot of painters, photographers, and artists find their own thing to do, because it's a mistake, and the mistake actually turned out to be great. So always experiment. And when you go with an image like this, of course, when we look at it here, it isn't 100% perfect, but I still see something in this image where I go like, hey, but if I'm able to lower the highlights a little bit, turn the black bit more black, turn the red a little bit more black so it gets more saturated, and maybe get a nice vignette around it. Who knows, maybe it's a great shot. And maybe next time I can use it for a client if he really likes that shot. Here I'm balancing it more out. I defocus the lighting a little bit, and now it also doesn't matter for me that it's cut off. You know, when it's really sharp and it's cut off, I go like, oh, it really has to be 100% symmetrical, because then I like it, but otherwise it just looks fake and off. When I defocus it slightly, now I can get away with much more. Now I don't mind it anymore that it's cut off. It actually nicely flows over. But hey, that's personal, right? But as you can see here, imagine this being totally sharp, and you get that nice triangle. That's okay, but it will look a little bit weird. I love these shots. Now, this is the problem with the optical snoot, I think. If you want to light the whole set, you actually need a 24mm. And I can't find a 24mm that's affordable in the 1.4 range or 1.8 range. So they're all very, very expensive. And the only option you have when you want to do something like this is just move the strobe further away with 50mm, but it also loses light output. So that's why in this case, I choose more for the close-ups. But that's the only limitation actually when you use a projector like this. You have to have the proper lenses with it. And if you only do portraits, the 135 is great. It's literally awesome. I'm going to use that on Saturday. But if you want more 3/4 bodies, the 50mm is great. For full sets, move the strobe all the way to the back with a 50mm, or try to score a really nice 24mm. Now, as you can see here, what I'm doing is actually not that hard. I'm just filling in the shadows with my color red. This is a trick that you can do in many, many different forms. For example, let's say you have your model against a white backdrop and you intentionally have this beautiful shadow on the backdrop, for example, where the model is standing. Get a strobe, for example, a red strobe or a blue strobe, place it behind your model, out of the frame, of course, and put it on a very, very low setting and just aim it at that shadow. What you will see is the white will still overpower the blue in the areas where it's white, so you don't see any blue there. But the shadow will turn blue. And that's really nice, especially if you place your strobes from two different sides. Now you can create two different colors in that shadow. Real funky stuff, really nice, and especially with artists or bands, it can really change the whole look of an image. And sometimes the client is just looking for something different and not something that everybody has. And then stuff like that really works. I like the composition here. This is not my thing, a little bit too much into the nose. Now, most of the times I don't like reflections into sunglasses, and sometimes I do. I'm a little bit on the fence for this one, but I think I like it. And what you can always do, by the way, is there's a really cool plugin. It's called, sorry, not Topaz. It's called Boris FX Optics. And I can highly recommend everybody getting it. Now, there are moments when something just goes wrong. You know, you have this perfect lens flare, you try to get it perfectly into the frame, and it works like a charm. It's beautiful. It's the best lens flare ever, but your model looks like this. And the next shot, the lens flare is not as nice, and your model looks great. What do? You try to combine the two, and that doesn't work, because for the very simple reason, lens flare, as mentioned before, is everywhere in the shot. So as soon as you try to get it in, it will fail. But what if I tell you there's software that can create exactly the lens flares that you use in the studio, but now you can also adjust them so they look exactly the same like the one that you nailed. And that's Boris FX Optics. There's so many options in there where you can go through, and I absolutely love this software. And you probably already know their software, because did you watch Stranger Things or Star Trek? Yes, there we go. That's the big brother from Boris FX Optics, as far as I know, Sapphire. And that's used a lot in the movies. So Boris FX is something that I sometimes will use to enhance the lens flares. Now, I think when you look at my portfolio, 95% of those images are real lens flares, and 5%, I dare you to spot them, are Boris FX. And I dare you to spot them because they're actually impossible to spot, because they look exactly the same like the original ones. The only area where you can spot my fake is actually in the area Heroes and Villains on my website. Heroes and Villains is our cosplay section, and that's where we go all breaks loose. We create digital backdrops, we create digital floors. The smoke is always real, but for example, the lens flares, the strobes are there, but the lens flares are much more exaggerated and bigger and more out there and brighter. In the normal photography, I try to keep them really subtle, so people don't go like, hey, there's a lens flare from Boris. No, they go like, ooh, a really nice lens flare. Okay, let's continue. Here you can see that I just don't have enough range to cover my whole model, so these shots are not my thing. This one I do like. I like that the angle is going like this and that the model stands out, and that actually, because the model is more in front of the backdrop, you can see that the lines on the model continue, and on the backdrop they drop more on the back. And this is something that is really difficult for software to do. For example, in Boris FX, you also have the option to create Gobo projector effects. The thing is, they don't use 3D mapping in the normal photography version. I think you can add 3D mapping, but I'm not sure because I never used that. And this is where you can see that somebody faked.
No signal.
What, no signal? I still have live here. Oh, okay, sorry. So when you use the Gobo projector from Boris FX, I always use the whole effect. But in all honesty, in most images where I do it, it's for clients when they really want that effect in, for example, for a cosplay shoot. On my portfolio, I don't think you will find any image where I actually used the Gobo projector from Boris. The lens flares, yes, the Gobo projector, I think it's just better if you do it real life. But if you don't have the projector, feel free to use the Gobo from Boris. Okay, same here, I love the diagonals. Here I don't like it at all because, again, here the model doesn't stand out. The model is just in front and I don't see any depth in the image. So that's why that image fails and this image, for example, stands out. It's all the difference between depth. I want to see the depth in the image, then it works for me. If I don't see that depth, it could be fake and somehow my eyes just go like, it's not interesting enough. And it doesn't say it's a bad image, because when I look at those images, I actually go like, Frank, why do you say they're not interesting? They're cool. But not compared to the other one, if you know what I mean. The other one is wow. This is, wow, great, but not wow. From a higher angle, actually works great, but I would love the lines to go a little bit further in this. That's what I would do if I have more time. So if it's not a digital classroom or not a workshop, I would actually set this up again, because I really love this set, but then I would make sure that this light just hits probably chest area here and then stops. So that's the only thing that I would change on that one. Same here. A little bit like this one. But again, the close-ups are way nicer. This is with less red because I'm moving to the sides. More subtle, also cool. The red one didn't fire a few times. And there we go. Overall, oh, that one is nice. Yeah, this one is nice. It's a little bit in the nose, to be honest, but you know, sometimes I don't mind. I remember when I started photography, one of the things that somebody told me, like, never, ever shoot from a low angle. I said, why not? He said, if you shoot from a low angle, you will always shoot into the nose. And somehow that just stuck into my mind, like never shoot from a low angle. And for years I didn't do it. And then I started doing it. I was going like, I hate the guy that gave me that advice, because shooting from a low angle doesn't always mean you shoot up to the nose. It means that you have to be careful about it. So maybe tilt your head a little bit more that way. Look down. Wear sunglasses if you get those raccoon eyes because you're using high lighting. But shooting from a low angle just creates so much tension in your image and so much guidance for your leading lines. You're crazy if you don't shoot from a low angle sometimes, as you can see here. And this time maybe a little bit up the nose. So maybe they should lower it a little bit. Okay, let's see if we have any questions.
Only compliments.
Thank you so very much. I used to use only one light, and Frank and the rest of the group really challenged me to use a second light. It's really elevated my recent shoots, and I'm grateful for everybody. Okay, this is Justin. And Justin, thank you so very much for watching. Justin is one of our Patreon members. And what we try to do in Patreon is, first of all, we're going to share all our behind-the-scenes photos. The photos from the workshop I always post immediately on Patreon, so you guys see them weeks later or spread out. At Patreon, on Sunday or Monday, they have all the images from the workshop and sometimes even more. But the cool thing about Patreon is they help each other, including, of course, me. Let me rephrase that. They help each other, and also I help the group out. Otherwise, you think they help me, and sometimes they do, by the way. So the cool thing about the Patreon group is that you can send in your images and you get a portfolio review. Now, the recent months has been a little bit slow, and we actually offered now every Patreon to send in the images, and in the end of January, I'm going to do a full portfolio review.
Limited time.
Limited time. So if you want to join our Patreon, the cool thing is it starts at $1 a month. I'm going to show you the video about our Patreon, and I think in the chat now, Justin can absolutely vouch for us that our Patreon is an absolutely awesome group. So let me show you the Patreon commercial, and then we're going to go back in the studio, but I have to set some stuff up. Hey guys, and welcome to our studio in Emmeloord. My name is Frank Dorhoff, and today I want to talk to you guys about something that we get a lot of questions about. Hey Frank, how do you like this image? Hey Frank, what can I improve in this image? And of course, I love to help you guys out. But online, I mostly am limited to just saying, hey, I really like it, or continue like this, or change this. I can only do short images because, let's be honest, we get so many questions. So that's what actually got us thinking. And we started a Patreon. Now, what is a Patreon? Well, let me put it this way. Do you want an extensive photo critique every month? Do you want the bed phone, where you can directly contact me with any questions you have? Do you want to be member of a group that's closed off on Facebook that have the same interest as you guys? That isn't about putting people down, but it's actually about helping people progress in their photography and retouching. Well, that's our Patreon. Now, by joining our Patreon, every month you can deliver 1 or 2 images. We're not that strict about it. And I will do a whole video. In that video, I will show you how I would do the retouching, what I would change about the shot, and I give you a whole lot of tips. That video is put online on a closed-off website. And it means that only the guys from Patreon can see that video and help you out. So I help you out, and the whole community helps you out. It's just an awesome way to learn. So, if you like what we do, of course, the first thing you can do is subscribe to our channels, leave comments, and smash that like button because we really like it, and tell other people about it. But if you want to do a little bit more and help us out creating the awesome programs you enjoy, like Behind the Closed Doors, Digital Classroom, quite frankly, our upcoming podcast, Beyond Photography with the Dorhoffs, and a lot more, then please join our Patreon. I already know you're absolutely gonna love it. So head on over to the link below and start joining our awesome group on Patreon and get a lot of benefits. Thank you so very much for supporting our work. See you online. Hey guys. Okay, that's something we still have to figure out, how to stop the videos after playing, and I already saw how to do it, so don't worry. Okay, next thing up is, of course, the blades. I promised the blades. And what are the blades? The blades are actually inside the Gobo projector, and you can just move them around and create some really nice patterns. For this one, I have to turn off the studio lighting, because with the Gobos, I can get away with just winging it. With this one, I absolutely cannot. So, are you ready? Let's go to the studio. That's my phrase. We have Batman, let's go to the Batmobile. And I go, let's go to the studio. Yep. As a huge Batman fan, I'm allowed to do that. Okay, let's turn off the studio lighting, so you don't have to see me, but only our beautiful model. For this one, I think I'm going to use my blue light from the side. And I'm not sure yet if I'm going to use it, so I'm just going to place it out of the frame. I want my model against the backdrop. You just lean. Nice. And we're going to use the blade. So I'm going to turn on my strobe. And now close your eyes because, oh, it's not that bright. As you can see now, we have a total area over our model. We don't want this, of course. So I'm going to use the blade to close this down. Now you have to be careful because it's in, how do you call it, mirrored. If you ever shot medium format cameras, you know how incredibly irritating that can be. Or frustrating, I have to say. Let's make it sharp. Ooh, I like this a lot. This is really nice. Okay. Annemiek, am I still visible from that camera or is it really bad? Because I would love to keep it that way. Okay. And as you can see here, I'm really using like a white, almost like a spotlight on our model. But this, of course, is way too much. I want it a little bit more accenty. So let's, yeah, a little bit more narrow. And on the bottom part, let's keep that one up. There we go. And close that one down. Okay, as you can see, without lighting in the studio, this is absolutely impossible. Nice. Move the light. There we go. Of course, we can now use different angles and create something that's more interesting. I'm going to open up the aperture. Nice. And now I can shoot full bodies, as you can see, without any problem. And that's the nice thing about the blades. The blades are awesome for those really high contrast shots. And it gives you a lighting quality that you cannot get with normal strobes. However, as you can see here, it's a little bit on the dark side. So I am going to raise my ISO up. I'm going to go for ISO 800 to overexpose it slightly. I'm shooting 4.5 ISO 800 at the moment, and this looks nice. At this moment, I could use a light meter for the very simple reason. Oh, the images don't come in, Annemiek? Oh, I don't see them on the monitor anymore. Are you sure? Weird. Oh, don't destroy my studio. Let me give you a close-up so I can see that they're coming in. No, I lost my connection, Annemiek, to... Okay. On the iPad, you see now the full... They're still coming in on the iPad. Okay, then it's okay. Then just leave the TV, as long as they come in. Okay, so as soon as they see as their hands above, I can't see it anymore. So this is the part where I have to figure out, like, okay, what am I going to do with my second strobe? So let's turn on the blue. Okay, there we go. And at this point, I just leave it where it is. I'm not going to move it around yet. I'm going to turn it down because I'm not using it in front of my camera anymore. But now it's part of the set. And I just wanted to spread out over the shadow areas. There we go. And now you can see that we give the shadows a really nice red hue. Is that visible, Annemiek?
It is, but it's made from a blue gel.
There we go. It's not a blue gel, it's a red one. Oh, yes, sorry, it's red. I'm sorry. Let's see if we can get some nice lens flare from the side, maybe. So I really like this setting, but the lens flare could be better, right? Now, the first thing somebody would say is just turn up the volume of the lens flare, but of the accent light. The problem is if I do that, I will also overpower my model a lot, and that something I don't want to do. So at this moment, when I look at my strobe, it's aimed that way, it's aimed that way, and it's aimed up. If I want more light towards my camera, in other words, into my lens, the only thing I have to do is aim the light source towards my camera and away from the model. Now, because I'm standing over there, that makes it a little bit more difficult. So I'm going to take my strobe and move it into the set. When I look now at how my strobe is set up, I'm just hitting my model with a little bit of that light, but everything else of the light is aimed towards me. That would mean that probably I'm now getting a lot of lens flare from the side and not that much on my model anymore. As you can see here, it's more subtle. Now we're going to move it into the set towards our model and we're going to find the perfect spot. So I want more lens flare and not that much on my model. And I still want to see the whole triangle. Now it's probably too close. Yep. So just move it slightly here, move it forward. And you don't need a big studio, as you can see here. This is a pretty small space I'm now working in. Yeah, this is nice. Now what we're going to do is we're going to raise the volume of that accent light to 1/4. Nice. And now I have to make sure that it doesn't hit my model. So now I'm going to move this here to just create a slight red infection on the backdrop, but more on my lens. There we go. And this is so cool from the omnidirectional dome from Rogue. You have so much control because now I have lens flare, I have my backdrop lit, I have my shadows lit. Try to find a modifier that does the same thing in that size. I dare you. I love these shots, really nice. And of course we can also do it from the front, or not, because there's a strobe. But let's try it like this. And now the strobe doesn't work anymore. So now we're gonna place it here. Gonna lower the output again. There we go. And I love that double shadow that the strobe now creates. Now, if you think that shadow is a little bit too high, that's no problem at all. Raise your lights. So let's take this one. And again, that's the main advantage of the omnidirectional dome. Sometimes it's tricky to set up and control in situations like this. It's so incredibly easy to control and set up. So it depends on how you use it, but for lens flares and lighting several areas of your set, I really think it's a great modifier. There we go. Okay, final setup for this. I'm going to leave the strobe on. I'm going to place my light really close to my model. And I'm going to try to figure out how to create something that's more interesting. Sometimes I feel sorry for my models by shining the light straight into their faces, but...
Where's my sunglasses?
Do you want sunglasses? If you want them. Okay, the main problem, of course, is always getting that shimmer of light correctly, and with the blades and proper... There we go. This is fun. Okay. This is nice for a close-up. Chin down just a little bit. Aim it slightly that way. As you can see now, because I'm closing the blades, I get more light output somehow. Chin down just a little bit. There we go. Oh, this is cool. I need the light slightly higher to open up the eyes. As you can see now, because I now see what I'm doing, I can much easier set everything up. The light we now have on in the studio is okay. I can work with that. But the video lights are way too bright to set this up correctly. This is it. Awesome. Thank you so very much. Should we do one more? Yeah, do you have one more? Yeah, we do one more. And we do that without the... can you create the flash bender on the Gigoto? In strip light configuration, please. Okay. Okay, so let's switch over to picture large. There we go. Okay, in between, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, of course. Now, what you saw with the last setup is that we started out actually with just a beam of light on my model. This is how most of the times I will start out. I will just create something and I will go like, well, maybe just fine tune it a little bit there, just do some exposure compensation there. Because when you use a light meter, your output is always perfect. But as you can see in these shots, sometimes you don't want perfect, you want something that works. And perfect is great, but something that works doesn't always is the perfect exposure. Sometimes you just want it a little bit overexposed, or maybe to get more mood, slightly underexposed. And this is actually why in this setup I'm not using a light meter. Today it's not about getting the perfect exposure, it's about getting the different moods in your shot. And these are absolutely too dark for me. But you can see that I'm looking here for angles. Now, I didn't practice this because I think a real educational program like Digital Classroom or like a workshop should be non-prepared. Everybody that does a live stream of an hour or 2 hours and practice everything beforehand and everything works, I think that's not a live stream, that's something that's practiced. I think when I started the Digital Classroom, the whole idea was to just go into the studio and just shoot and let people watch. So those episodes were actually 8 hours, 10 hours, starting in the morning, ending at night. And at that point, we just went like, this is not the perfect format. So just try to do a photo shoot in the studio. But for me, doing just a photo shoot wasn't interesting enough. So I thought, like, let's put a little bit of education in there. But the main item of all our workshops and also Digital Classroom is that we don't prepare anything. We know the theme and that's it. And that's how you guys can see the whole creative process, and I think that's much more interesting. So here I started out with a more bright area, or a more larger area, and I was going like, yeah, I really like this. The model really jumps out, but it doesn't engage with me yet. It doesn't draw me in. And most of the times when something draws me in, it has to do with lines. As you can see here, this one really draws me in because everything just works together perfectly for me. And here, the arms are out of the frame, so that doesn't work because it's out of the frame, it's out of the light. Now, at one point I started to think like, let's add that red. And as you can see here, that really changes the whole mood. And now I can have the hands of the model out of the frame because the red will actually pick that up. And then when I started shooting this and explaining it to you guys, I was going like, why not narrow that beam of light and create that lens flare and just fill up the shadows with that lens flare. And that's why I started to do a more narrow look. So let's go for those. So I can show you what we did there. By the way, I also love this one with the angles. You see how she's leaning towards the side of the frame, towards that side. Really like that. Okay, so here we changed the position. As you can see here, it's very, very intimate, very, very close, intimate. And the red is actually our main color here. But as you can see here, it only fills up the shadows. The face still looks normal. And that's because the face is lit with much more power than the red. In these cases, the red doesn't have to be very, very bright for the very simple reason. It only opens up the shadows. It only gives you that nice little accent in the shadows. That's all the red is for. Love these shots. These are really nice. And I think this is one of my best ever. Yeah. It's a little bit moody for my taste, a little bit too dark. I'm just kidding with you guys. Okay, so Enowick is setting up. The model is changing, so I'm almost ready for the rest. So let's do one little more commercial and then we're back. Hey guys, my name is Frank Dorhoff and we're in front of our studio in Emmeloord and it's freezing cold. So it's the perfect day, not really, to shoot on any location, because let's be honest, you don't have to travel far to create stunning images with your models. You can do it anywhere. So today we're going to go out in the field, we're going to go to a bicycle tunnel, we're going to use a long road with strong backlighting, and we're even going to be pulled over by the police. Yeah, that was interesting. Now you might wonder, why should I follow this class? Well, we're going to start from the bottom. We're not going to use a lot of strobes. I'm not going to use difficult techniques. You do need powerful strobes for this, but if you have a powerful strobe, you can do this very, very easily. We keep it simple, but most of all, we try to create images with a lot of impact that will make you stand out from the rest. So join me on calibri1.com for my new class, shooting on any location. You're gonna love it. Oh, the camera. Oh, I hope you did see me when I explained everything, by the way, but I think I was out of the frame. Anyway, that Calibri1 video is, by the way, awesome, and there's a really nice story connected to it with Lois and me and a friend of mine. We were filming in Emmeloord, and of course we have a film crew with us from Calibri1, so those were 2 guys, and of course a model, Lois, me, and a friend holding the lights. And at one point we were almost done filming, walking back to the car for some final shots, and the police just came up, wanted to see IDs, wanted to see everything, and who are you? How old is your model? And I was going like, my model is 22 at that moment, or 23. Why? Yeah, and who are you? And everybody had to show their licenses and passports. Somebody complained that we were doing, what was it, Annemiek? A porn shoot inside the bicycle tunnel, right?
Yeah.
So I actually had to laugh, so I just opened up my laptop and showed all the images, and they were all dressed, of course. It was blistering cold, so I actually told the cop, like, do you really think we're gonna do, with this kind of weather, we're gonna do that? But this is something that you have to be prepared for, and this is actually an email that got to me last week, I believe, or 2 weeks ago, about somebody that really got into trouble for himself by experiencing something like this. He said, yeah, the cops came in. And the thing is, guys, this can happen. You shoot with a model somewhere, and some people see a model, they see a photographer, and the first thing they think is, oh, this is something dirty. The moment that the cops come in, don't do anything weird. Just show your images and just explain you're a professional photographer, you're doing stuff for a video, or you're doing a commercial gig, or you're just shooting for your own portfolio. Just be honest. And in 99.9% of the cases, there will be no problem at all. Like with us, the cops actually had to laugh and wanted to have a picture with the model, and then they went. So in the end, everything worked out. So again, I mentioned this purely because, one, you saw the video about that part, and also because we got an email about it, about somebody. How do you approach something like that? Totally open. Just show the images that you shoot, tell them why you're there, and just remember they're also doing their work just like you, and they want to get out as quickly as possible. If they arrest you, it's a lot of paperwork, so just be nice and just be open about it. Okay, is Lois ready already? Or is she still...
So maybe we can tell about the new baby.
One moment. And a week? Is there something I need to know?
Not from us.
Oh, no, of course, I know what Enoweek is meaning. From this side, we wish to congratulate Nadine, our model, stylist, and friend, of course, with the birth of her daughter. You probably saw the videos and the photos of Nadine when she was pregnant, and oh my, is she a lucky model, because she has a lot of pregnancy shots in all kinds of different styles. So, yeah, she got, I believe, 8 different looks from this pregnancy.
Yes, definitely.
So, congratulations. Nadine is still in the hospital because, well, it was a very heavy birth, I believe. So if you want to send something, you can always email us and we can get you into contact with Nadine. So that's our news. And before we do the final setup, Enoweek, is there something people need to know? Our open house is next week. So on the 25th, I believe, of January, we have our open house in our studio that's totally free. And you can come in at, I believe, 10 o'clock. It's from 10 till 1.
And it's also a live workshop, and you can participate for free.
You can participate for free. Did you hear that? Oh, that's awesome, right? So it's from 10 till 1. We show you our products, of course. You can ask whatever you want. And we're going to do a live workshop. It's a small mini workshop and it's totally free. So if you want to join, just go to our website and I will show you very quickly the overlay for our... Yeah, that's nice. Open dag. There we go. We don't have a lot of space because we can only fit like 40, 50 people for an open house like that. So be fast because we already got some attendees. So that's awesome. So make sure you go there to Open Dag if you're in the Netherlands, of course, or if you're from abroad and you want to fly in, let us know because we will give you a special treat. Okay, let's go back to our photo shoot. There we go. Okay, are you ready to switch cameras?
I am.
I will switch cameras, otherwise people...
Well, that's no problem. I'm very...
Okay, final setup for this. Why a final setup? Because we get a lot of questions about the flash bender. How do we use it? Why? How? And whatnot more. So I thought let's do the final set with the flash bender. Now the flash bender is aimed here towards our model, but it's put on the GT200 from Gobo. Now Rogue designed the flash bender to be very flexible, to be your main light source for event photographers, wedding photographers, but they didn't use a strip light at that moment. So when I got the flash bender, I started using it on the backdrop, creating nice patterns, creating stuff that it wasn't designed for. They contacted me and a few years later we started adding the grid, we started adding soft boxes, soft silver material, and this is the final flash bender, or final, it's the version 3. Now, what does it do? In the strip light configuration, it actually covers pretty wide area of lighting, but it does it in a special way. When you use a normal strip light, the problem is in most cases that the strobe is here and the strip is like this. So that means that you always have your hotspot in the middle. So a strip light is very bright in the middle and then it just falls down on the top and the bottom. Now, of course, you can use a diffusion panel in the middle, but still the top and the bottom are not useless, but they are a lot less in light quality and also in light output. When you look at the flash bender, what we're doing is we're using the strobe on the bottom. And because it's a soft silver reflective material and it isn't that large, you get a nice and even spread of your light. Now, because of the size of the strip, it also spreads out really nicely. So when I place it really close to my model, I can get a really nice focus beam of light on my model. We're going to do that now. And when I move it further away, you can see that it's perfectly suitable for full bodies or 3/4 bodies. That's what I love about the flash bender. Can you stand against the backdrop again? So for the first setup, I'm going to use it from the side. This is one of my favorite setups with the flash bender and also with strip lights. I'm going to use channel A. I'm going to use it really close to the backdrop. It's about maybe 40 centimeters away from the backdrop. It's channel A. So let's turn that down first. There we go. And of course change the camera. Now I should use a light meter now.
Why don't you? It's over here.
Because I don't have the triggers on it, Annemiek. Can you look a little bit up? There we go. And I know my gear a little bit, so. And this is my favorite setup with flash bender. Look at the quality of lighting and the lens flare and everything on the backdrop. This is one of those images when you shoot for an artist or you shoot for somebody that plays guitar or that wants a real moody image, and I shoot something like this, they immediately go like, whoop, that's it, that's what I want. So yeah, and the cool thing about this setup is you can move around your model. And from this side it looks totally different. Nice. And of course you can shoot from the front. And again, it looks totally different. Oops, don't destroy my studio, please. And when you move your light slightly forward, you get a wraparound effect. So now, when I shoot into the light, one moment, I have to aim it towards my model, of course. You get that really nice wraparound effect and also a little bit like a spot on the back, nice shadow. And again, move forward and you get that flat lighting. Not bad, different. Okay. And if you want something that's really close to your model, move your light here, aim it down, and maybe ask your model to move a little bit forward. There we go. Stay that way. Now the angle I'm trying to get, and it's a little bit hard to see on camera, is my model is here. The lighting is here. So what I'm doing is the lighting literally just falls over the side of the model. Now you might think, why are you doing that? Very simple. Light falls off over the distance. We call this the inverse square law. If I place my light this close to my model and I would aim it at the face would get all the light. But everything on the bottom of my model will fall down very quickly into black. We don't want that. So what I'm doing is I'm aiming my light source more towards her hands, but this distance is much larger than this distance. So the side of the light will hit the face of the model, the middle of the light will hit this, and the sides of the light will hit the hands. And at that point, I hope that I even it out very nicely. And now I can use high contrast images without any problem or big softboxes, which especially on location is really nice. As you can see here, I don't need to change anything. It's super dark on the backdrop because we're using that light so close to my model. So whatever backdrop I have, I can almost make it completely black by just moving my model forward or backward. But it also means I can use creative backdrops. So for example, blue gel on the backdrop. The backdrop is totally black, so it really jumps out. In this case, I don't like it that much because I'm actually very content with my backdrops. So we can also change this light source to create something like this. Now what I'm doing here is I'm trying to get some light behind my model on the backdrop, but also on the face. Now when you look at the setup like this, you immediately go like, hey, but the light is now aimed at the face. Correct. So what we're going to do is going to actually move it slightly back. And there we go. So now we have a line on the back. We have our model lit. It's a little bit overexposed. So let's turn that down to F10. There we go. Nice. Okay, final one. Can you turn around? And then when I say yes, turn around. Wait, be careful for the strobe over there, that you don't hurt yourself. Are you ready? 1, 2, go. And again, looking up. 1, 2, go. Awesome, thank you so very much. You're done with the photos.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing, of course, oh no, sorry. We do have to take one more shot. This one is really important, and I almost forgot. This is the one with the color checker.
Yes.
So, yep. Hold it as flat as possible towards the light. Let's shoot it from here. Thank you. That was the final shot. Thanks. Now let me explain why this was totally wrong, what I did. Okay. Did you switch to main camera only, Annemiek?
I just switched now.
Okay, cool. This is the Calibrite Color Checker Passport. And this is actually the Duo, so we can use this for video and we can use it for photography. Now, what do you do with a Color Checker Passport? Now, what you do is you can create a profile in Lightroom. And you can also nowadays create ICC profiles. In the past, it was only DCP profile for Lightroom. Now you can also use ICC for example, Capture One. But this part is for white balance. This part is to create a profile. Now, it's very important to realize that color, and I explained this many, many times, has 3 coordinates, an X, a Y, and a big Y, hue, saturation, and luminance. Now, when you change the luminance of a color, the color will become more saturated, more muddy. So that means that when you want to create a profile for your camera, it's vital. It's literally vital to do it exactly right. Don't ever create a profile from a color checker if you don't use a light meter. It will be very, very funky and wonky as soon as you start experimenting with correct exposures. So why did I shoot the color checker anyway? There's another part in the color checker that's incredibly important. When we shoot in the studio, we don't want only a correct profile, because sometimes I just build one and that's it, but we want to make sure that every single shot has the right color balance. And that's the difference. A color profile determines the red of your camera and lens and strobes compared to the red that it should be, and then it creates a correction profile, DCP or ICC. However, the white balance is something completely different. This will take out, for example, a hue that's reddish or blue or yellowish and make the colors neutral. Now, this I can do without any problems with underexposed shots. Overexposed, as long as the color checker isn't overexposed, there's no problem. But as soon as one of the channels, say 254, that doesn't work. So as long as they all stay below, let's say 250, and I think that's way too high, but let's say 230, you're fine. And that's when you do the white balance with the color checker. So in this case, I can't build a profile because I didn't use a light meter, but I can still use the color checker for a white balance. Now, when you shoot with gels, a lot of people ask me about this, like, hey Frank, so how does it work when you shoot with gels? Very simple, exactly the same way. You take out all the gels and then you create a profile with your Calibrite color checker passport. That profile you use when you start using the gels. Why shouldn't you create a profile when the gels are there? Very simple. If you create a profile when the gels are on your strobes, it will take into account those gels and try to create a neutral color. Why do you use gels on your camera or on your strobes? Very simple, because you want to have a different color in your image. So when you use a color checker passport, light it as flat as possible, use a light meter, preferably use your light from a long distance so you don't have to take into account the inverse square law. And of course, make sure that afterwards you create a profile with the proper name. So Sony a7R5 Gobo GT400 Quickie Softbox. You will quickly find out, no pun intended, you will quickly find out that if you have a proper strobe setup, and we tested it out with the Ellingroms, with the Hensels and with the Gobos now, if you use one softbox and the strobes, you probably will have exactly the same profile when you use a different softbox. So create one profile, use that for all your images, and then use the color checker passport to have a white balance point in every shoot you do, also if you don't use a light meter. Now, as soon as you do a commercial job, I highly recommend for every commercial shoot, shoot a color checker passport, because often those colors have to be dead on accurate, and that's the point where you start using, of course, the light meter and the color checker passport. For the more creative stuff, just use it for a white balance. Okay, let's see if there are any questions in the chat. If you guys have any questions, feel free to post them. Anyway, do we still have some news besides the open house? When is the next digital classroom?
It's in February.
It's in February.
Probably February 12th.
Okay, probably 12th of February.
It will be something like a Valentine shoot or something.
Yeah, and then it's all about you guys. What do you want to see? So leave comments below. What kind of topics do you want to see in our next digital classroom? Or if we don't get any topics in, we're going to do something creative with probably some props, maybe some smoke. I'm feeling a little bit like more adventurous shoots.
Yeah. You can do that.
You can do that. But if you have any problems or questions, just feel free to leave them and maybe we'll incorporate them in the next digital classroom.
And
yeah.
Don't forget, the photo days are back.
Oh, yeah, that is awesome. The photo days are back. A lot of trade shows stop. There's one that didn't want to stop, even if they asked them, and that's Photo Fair in the Netherlands. Yay! It's one of my favorite shows, to be honest, nowadays, because it's so cool. It's in an open area. It's tents where you teach your workshops. It's a really cool vibe with a lot of the cosplayers. You have steampunk. You have dogs that actually do stuff in the water. You have kite surfers, I believe. They have flamethrowers, and it's insane. They have horses, and it's 2 days, insane mayhem with photography and a lot of classes in tents. If it's hot, it's really hot. If it's cold, it's nice. So Photo Days, of course, is in Belgium, and that's a real trade show. Now, the thing that I like about Photo Days is, one, it's very intimate. So a lot of the dealers have time to talk to you. It's very broad setup, so you have wide areas where you can walk around, and they have great education. And that's the part that I always think is the most important thing in a trade show. Have great speakers, great education, because that's where people come for. They don't come for a new camera. You can find it on internet. It's nice that it's there, but they come for the speakers, for the educational part. And Photo Days and Photo Fair both are awesome with their speakers. So make sure you check out one of those trade shows if you're in the Netherlands. I think that's it, Annemiek.
Well, we are invited to do another Beeldkracht Festival.
Oh yeah, that's true, but that's in the Netherlands, and that's a smaller event. And
May, and it's in Hoofddorp.
yeah, in May in Hoofddorp we have the Beeldkracht. So we did the first one, and I believe that was a real success. People were standing outside when we did the seminar, so that was cool. And they asked me back for the Hoofddorp version. But those are the smaller events, so that's maybe 25 to 50 people in a room, and maybe 200 people in the larger room. The trade shows are, of course, for everybody. Also, when you live abroad, people literally fly in for those. So Photo Days in Belgium is back. We're very happy with that. And of course, Photo Days, the Photo Fair in the Netherlands is also continuing. This was really it. Thank you so much for watching, guys. And I'm going to play some Call of Duty. If you are online, add me as a friend or just email me and let's shoot some stuff. No, I'm just kidding, of course. But Call of Duty, I highly recommend it. It's a great game. Yeah, that was it. Thank you so very much for watching, guys. And please leave comments below how the image quality and the audio quality was compared to previous digital classrooms in your experience. Because this is new software and we're totally new with it. So, okay, thank you and see you again next time. Bye, guys.